Welcome to Connecting to Admired Leadership, where twice a month we explore the behaviors and routines that make great leaders extraordinary. I'm Wes Bender, and I have the distinct pleasure of hosting some of our firm's partners, coaches, and clients to discuss leadership in ways you won't hear anywhere else. Let's dive into this episode and make people and situations better together. John, I'd love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Who are you? Some have probably been on the call. Again, this is your third time, but who are you? What do you love about your role and what you get to do with Admired Leadership?
Well, thank you, Wes, and thank you, everyone, for joining. I saw a lot of Texans on the call, Colorado, North Carolina, Indiana. Welcome to everyone. Thank you for being here. So, Wes, as you know, I'm an executive coach. I'm also a partner in our leadership practice at CRA Admired Leadership. What that means is I spend most of my days helping senior executives get better and also helping other coaches get better. But the bottom line is I'm very blessed to build wonderful relationships with great people, trying to help them become better leaders in their organizations, from smaller organizations, nonprofits, all the way to the largest financial services companies in the world.
That's awesome. And we have direct your attention, John, to the Q&A. It's not a question yet, but somebody looks like giving you a shout out. Somebody that participated in a program recently and says was fortunate to learn from John. So they're in the Q&A there. So
thank you very much. Thank you.
Glad you're here with us. So there's tons of leadership content associated with Admired Leadership. One of the terms you'll hear a lot that I want to make sure to articulate, that some on previous calls have kind of set up meetings with me and said, you keep saying this word, and I want you to, that it would have been nice to fill that out a little bit more. So before we dive into that, I want to kind of really tell you what we mean when we say this word behavior. Another way to say it might be good practice as well. So a behavior or good practice. What that means is all of our content comes from 30 years of studying the world's most admired leaders. When we say that, we're talking about studying the very small percentage of individuals that excel at driving results and hit goals out of the park for their organization, and they generate great relationships, great followership. So everyone that's on the call, if you're listening to this recording, just think for a minute. Who do you admire that you would say, man, they knock goals out of the park and they stir a certain energy in me? I love to be around them. Just think that percentage of people is very small. So all of our content comes from simply studying those people, learning what they do, right? Leadership is what you do, learning what they do, and then categorizing those into universal behaviors, routines, good practices that really everybody can do. So it's a very simple approach to leadership development. You can liken it to learning a new skill, learning a new hobby, learning chess, learning a sport. How do you get better at those things? Study the people who do that best, are most admired for that, and do what they do. That's our approach to leadership. So with that, John, I'd love for you to dive us into one of my favorite topics, and that is how the best leaders in the world inspire and motivate. Because everybody on the call, everybody knows that leaders need to be able to inspire and motivate others, to stir that energy in them, to really drive that intrinsic motivation so they'll go off and do their thing. So just kind of top of mind, inspire and motivate. How do the best leaders do that? Give us some thoughts.
Well, what's most important there is it's easy for most of us to get hung up on or focused maybe too much on the notion that we need to inspire or motivate. By the way, we're going to use those words interchangeably. I know they're two different things, but we're going to inspire and motivate different people because everybody's different. That I need to have a special approach to motivate Wes. I need a special approach to motivate Andrea. That makes a lot of sense, and we've all been conditioned to think that. But one of the beautiful things about admired leadership and these folks who both get results and followership is that there are some universals. There are some universals out there in terms of, regardless of culture, regardless of status, regardless of where you sit in the organization. For example, who doesn't want somebody who's rooting for them? Who doesn't want someone that they respect and admire to be constantly cheering, rooting, being a fan of them? We can pretty safely call that almost a universal human need.
Yep.
And so if we take that to the next level, what does it really mean to motivate and inspire? What does it mean to motivate and inspire when delivering praise? What does it mean to motivate and inspire when offering feedback?
Mm.
And that's why we wanted to call up this field note as kind of the center of our conversation for today. From December 31, for those of you who are tuned into the field notes, there's a wonderful note called Praise Without the But. Praise without the, yeah, that's great, but is the best reinforcer. So we're going to dive into that in a couple minutes.
Yeah, awesome. So one of the things I want to pull out and then let you continue to, what you heard from John so far might be couched, and John, you can tell me if I'm articulating this incorrectly for sure. But what we've heard so far would be somewhat of a principle-based approach in some ways to leadership, where we say the best leaders inspire and motivate. Do you agree? Yes, I agree with that. Then you should go inspire and motivate. The preemptive sandbox that we play in is this ability to say, okay, here's exactly how the most admired leaders do that. So take any principle that's out there and dive a little bit deeper. And John, I think you're going to share one particular behavior good practice with us related to inspiring and motivating. Is that true?
Exactly right. So the field note makes the point that even when we are trying to offer praise, even when we are trying to offer encouragement and support, oftentimes we mix in praise with, that was a really great job, but next time, if you also considered this, well, guess what? All people hear is the but. Or oftentimes people are listening for, oh, Wes is paying me a compliment. He's paying me a compliment. Oh, here it comes. Here comes the real feedback. And we've likely all experienced that, and maybe even are struggling with that when delivering feedback ourselves. So the question is, how do you deliver praise without the but? How do you deliver praise that's not disingenuous? And the answer is you share that praise with a third party. So while studying admired leaders, we recognize that many of them, particularly those who what we would call, or who tend to be praise stingy. Like they have very high standards. They believe in excellence. So if you're doing a great job, well, that's your job. I'm not going to praise you very much for that. But still, people need that encouragement. They need that support. They need to be inspired in some way. So we picked up on a behavioral routine, a behavioral pattern, which is what we now call third-party compliments. So the simple question is, hey, when's the last time you complimented one of your peers to another peer? When's the last time you complimented your spouse to your spouse's parents? When's the last time you complimented one of your kids to one of your kids' friends? So why is that so important? Well, it certainly takes the but out of the equation. Because think about it, when we go out of our way to pull someone aside and say, wow, you wouldn't believe what Wes just did. You wouldn't believe the performance he gave. You wouldn't believe how he described admired leadership.
I'm glad we're recording this right now. I'm gonna pull that little snippet out.
When we go out of our way to share that with another human being, there's no but.
Right. Yep.
And the other beautiful thing about it, what our founder, Randall Stutman, refers to as that this is kind of like a time release vitamin. We don't know exactly when it's going to get back to Wes, but it will get back to Wes. Right? Yeah. So third-party compliments are something that all of us could start doing as soon as we leave this call.
Yeah. So
the idea is, are you tuned into it? Are you looking for opportunities to share good things with others about your direct reports? And this is not, but bear with me for a second here, Wes. This is not about taking an email and forwarding it to your senior leader complimenting one of your directs. Of course, do that. That's important. You want to offer recognition. You want to offer that level of exposure. But third party compliments are different. It's one to one, and we share them because we're genuinely impressed.
Yep. I've heard you and others talk about at times third-party compliments, this behavior, this routine, this good practice, this pattern, as we've talked about it, that the most admired leaders do. I've heard it classified as kind of a time release vitamin. You know,
Yes.
in an email, it's very direct, and do those things. Don't hear what John's not saying here. Email those things, do those things. But a time release vitamin is something you're doing, and you really, there's no other reason to do that other than I really just want to lift this person up. And that time release vitamin, you don't know when it's going to be, but eventually drops on that person and inspires and motivates. We've probably all been in that position where we have received from somebody else, has communicated to us something about us that just inspired and motivated us in that way. And the most admired leaders do that. Okay, I'm going to share an example of this because one of the things I want our listeners to hear is this, the idea of admired leader behaviors. The design is to engage in these behaviors initially in a way so that they galvanize and become part of who we are, which means as we engage in these behaviors, we want to do it in our personal lives, in our social settings with our family, and we want to do it professionally as well. Third-party compliments is a big one for me personally, because I heard our firm talk about this a couple of years ago, and I thought, man, if my family embraced that as a behavior, if I could somehow ingrain that in a culture as a family. So I'm going to share a story, and then John, I'm going to put you on the spot to say, in the professional setting, do you have any case studies or stories of how this behavior or inspire motivating plays out as well? So with my family, I've got a 16-year-old, 13-year-old, 11-year-old, two boys and a little girl. And I started talking to them about the other kids. So I would talk to my oldest about my daughter when she wasn't around. And I just began practicing engaging in low risk situations, this particular behavior. Well, little did I know, they started picking up on it almost innately and started sharing about others in the family outside of that as well, to the degree where last year, my wife, I'll even get a little emotional about it. My wife was finishing up law school. She was so worried for 4 years. She had missed out on all the kids' activities, going to class late and all, and she was really having a hard time finishing the work, being disciplined to go out, until one day she had a parent teacher conference with one of my sons. My son was not there. And the minute that teacher came on, said, "You wouldn't believe what your son says about you behind your back." And so my mom is so disciplined. She's been working so hard. She's inspired me. Use that word. You talk about everything my wife needed to finish strong at that point. That's the power of a third party compliment. Imagine getting a third party compliment from your teenage son.
Yeah.
That way. So that's an example of how it plays out, how powerful this very small practical approach to inspiring and motivating can be. John, do you have any examples how that
Well,
kind
my example is similar, but one of my favorite clients of all time, CEO of kind of a second tier investment bank that was recently acquired. He went out of his way to take advantage of opportunities like bring your daughter to work, bring your son to work, and would go to those kids specifically and say, hey, you would not believe how impactful your mom is in this place. You would not believe how impactful your dad is in this place. And similar to your story, of course, that gets back to that employee, that banker, when they go home.
Yeah. So I love what Richard Chapman is on the call. Richard is an investment banker, and this came from an investment banker. I think that's what I saw, Richard, in the chat box there. He had a great suggestion. And John, I don't know if you can speak to this. Again, just let me know if I'm putting you on the spot. But he said, when you give third party, I'm paraphrasing his words, but when you give third party compliments, honor people for who they are, not just for what they do.
Yeah, 100%. We know from the research, and this is tricky as parents, that who we are for our kids, the research suggests at times is more important than what we do for them, which
Mm.
frankly really frustrates me at times.
All right, I'm interested.
Because we do so much. We're constantly doing for our kids. We're constantly doing for our direct reports. And of course that matters. But to Richard's point, how we show up for them day to day, whether it's people who work for us, people who work with us, colleagues, peers, direct reports, it doesn't matter. Who we are for them is important. That's part of followership. It's not just, of course, we need to do, we think of admired leadership as it's not servant leadership. That's a different model, a fine model, but different. We think of it more as admired leaders are resources for their people, which means a lot of things, including the doing and the being.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. I had about 3 questions come to mind. I'm trying to figure out which one to do. But before I get after that, want to direct your attention. I forgot to mention the QR codes on either side of me will direct you to some free resources. So you heard John say earlier, the field note that this conversation is coming from. He's referring to the daily emails that go out from Admired Leadership, just really practical leadership nuggets that come every day, 365 days out of the year. One of these QR codes will take you if you want to register for those. The other QR code will actually take you to sign up and register and be able to watch what we've created and we call 5 foundational videos for the foundation of Admired Leadership, practical conversation, and content that we have. On that platform as well, there are over 100 of these behaviors. So third-party compliments carry the most weight is the name of this behavior that we've been talking about. There's over 100 of these behaviors that we've pulled from the most admired leaders and created an online platform for that. You can go check that out with one of these QR codes as well. With that, John, I'm trying to determine which.
Well, while you're
anything else?
thinking about
Yeah,
that,
go ahead.
while you're thinking about that, I want to add one thing to the regarding this field note. They're talking about the but, and that people are listening for that. That's the same thing is happening when we follow that old technique that is lovingly referred to as the crap sandwich. There used to be it used to be common guidance. I wouldn't call it best practice, but common guidance used to say, hey, tell them what you need to tell them something good. Start with something good, tell them something nice, tell them what you really want to tell them, and then end with something nice. Well, this is no different than the but is still in the middle, and that's all people hear.
Yeah.
So, and that's what, Wes, as you know, we would refer to as a technique, as opposed to techniques are used for effect, as opposed to a behavior or a best practice that becomes routine and allows you to build skillfulness. So why not practice third-party compliments, get good at that, instead of using a technique called, used to be known as the crap sandwich.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. And you win for closest to dropping a curse word on one of our webinars as well. So
that's really good for me. It's incredible restraint.
It's and we use that term crap sandwich to ignite a little bit of tension. We call it that crap sandwich because it's used so prevalently. I mean, that concept, that way of giving feedback is used all the time. And we've seen through research and study that it really has the opposite effect of what you really want it to do. And so why not study the world's best? How are they doing these things and those behaviors that they have? Well, the last thing I'd love for you to speak to is what you just said around these behaviors coming across as technique rather than really part of my genuine leadership acumen. How does a person, so third-party compliments are going to not be in the natural wheelhouse of some leaders, right? Some leaders just don't give praise very often at all.
Hmm.
If a leader said, okay, I know I need to develop a higher level of followership, I need to energize people a little bit more, the people that I lead. And one way that I'm learning that I can do that is begin intentionally moving into the space of giving third party compliments. And said to do that, how would you recommend a leader go about that? Because if
I
they just start spreading third party compliments like crazy, that all their employees are going to come back and say, what crazy conference, whatever, did you go to? And how long is this going to last? Because this is
y-
not,
yeah,
how does a person
I
really
don't know if
engage
that
with behaviors
I
that
don't know
aren't?
if that it would be the case on something like that.
Okay.
Because third party compliments are done, one to one. Um, but I think you already pointed to the how to here, Wes, which is, we're not in the business of helping the organizational leader become better. We're in the business of helping the whole leader get better, which means you should try third party compliments at home, in your communities, at work, wherever you go. Like, why not try to be the same person in every room of the house? You don't need to just turn off your leadership when you come home.
Yeah.
So it's really being on the hunt for opportunities to share good news with others in a
Mhm.
in a genuine, authentic, meaningful way. I mean,
Mhm.
you only give think about it, when this happens naturally, you deliver a third party compliment because you're genuinely impressed. In fact, you can't wait to share it with somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. There's so much. So again, what's amazing to me is there's so much to dive into just in this one behavior. There are over 100 of these and resources associated with each one, on our online platform. There's so much to dive into in the dialogue. Just so y'all know, prior to any of these calls, all I typically do with somebody like John is say, what topic do we want to talk about? And we never know exactly where the conversation is going to lead. But there's already been a couple nuggets that I've picked up on a behavior that I've really tried to implement that's been new and engaging. And it's amazing what happens just having dialogue and not a PowerPoint presentation or a workshop or anything like
Well,
that.
that's an interesting point, Wes, because when you hear these behaviors, like, let's just take this example. Third party compliments carry the most weight. When you first hear that, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. In fact, that's kind of like common sense. But when you really start to peel it back and look at it and start using it, there's
Mhm.
there's more nuance. It's much richer than, oh yeah, I'm just going to start giving third party compliments.
Yeah, that's good.
And
All
many
right.
of the behaviors are like that because at first it looks like, oh, that's simple, that's straightforward,
Yeah.
but it's richer.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to give a couple actionables, John. I'll give you kind of final words, any, thoughts, encouragement you might give to everyone on the call or whoever's listening to the recording, but a couple action items. One is obviously, I've got the best job. I say obviously, I've got the best job. I do have a great, fantastic job where I wake up on the side of the bed every day. Look what I get to do today. My leadership positions me just to have conversations with folks, and what they're seeing right now. Could leadership be something that moves the needle forward for their organization, for them individually, or the teams that they lead? I've dropped my meetings booking link in the chat box. Would love to chat with folks. We do not do cookie cutter scopes of work. We really customize what we do for folks. We spend a lot of time on the front end with clients talking about their needs, talking about their understanding of this behavioral approach to ensure it complements anything else that they're doing right now. It doesn't inhibit or compete with anything. And then obviously we have conversation around budget. And at the intersection of that, we have lots of ways for people to, again, circling back to our initial reason for this call, we have lots of ways for people to engage with this practical content and have conversation around that. So would love to chat with anybody. John, I'm going to give you kind of the final words here. Any pieces of encouragement that you would give to probably a group of people who find themselves in one of three spots? Either one, they were just curious, they get our field notes, they're like, let me see what this thing is all about. Two, maybe they're an individual really looking for something. They're just looking for additional information. Or three, we have a lot of folks on the call who oftentimes are positioned by their organization to go find leadership content. Say, we need to grow our leaders. We need stronger succession planning. We need a stronger onboarding, pieces, whatever it is to develop their leadership. What encouragement would you give to folks as they're out there looking for leadership development?
I would simply say try it on.
That's good.
Because there's an age-old argument in leadership: does belief drive behavior? Does behavior drive belief? And
Yeah.
let's just say, for the sake of argument, it's both.
Yeah.
But go try third-party compliments. See what happens.
Yeah. That's good. Well,
I mean, and especially if you're a skeptic, especially if you're a skeptic, see what happens.
Yeah. I'll tell you the worst that I'm going to drop one more thing in the chat, but we're taking these conversations in locations in person all over the nation. Most recently, we're going to be in Phoenix, just outside of Phoenix in Scottsdale. We're going to be in Nashville, Tennessee. We're also going to be in Atlanta. Those are free in-person events. So just think of this kind of a conversation with about 40 senior level leaders in the room, no cost associated for an hour and a half rather than just the 30 minutes that we have. I can say the worst thing that's ever happened to me when I've tried on one of these behaviors. So you think, what do you got to lose? The worst thing I ever did was try to bring a behavior into a high risk situation, a high risk circumstance that I had not really practiced that behavior, really done it elsewhere. And that was in a moment of intense fellowship with my wife. And she turned to me and she said, "Wes, I don't need to be admired leadership right now. Thank you very much." And she turned it into a verb. But if that's the worst that can happen, and the potential to truly inspire and motivate, the potential to give unbelievable feedback, the potential to build relationships like you never had, the potential far outweighs the risk associated with trying on these behaviors. John, anything else before we close up?
Don't coach your spouse.
Don't coach your spouse. I needed to hear that so bad. Hey, everyone, thank you for joining. Look forward to those of you who I'll be able to chat with after this webinar. Hope you will go and check out some of the events that we have coming up. We'd love to connect with many of you in person. Thanks for being here. John, thank you for your leadership. And thank you so much to you and the partners and the coaches who really practice this content and really show it and model it in such a powerful way. It's highly appreciated. Everybody have a great rest of the day. Cheers.
Thank you, Wes. Stay well.